Is your 2017 to 2020 Chrysler Pacifica stressing you out? Does it jerk? Does it buck? Almost become undrivable at some point? If it does, I've got good news for you. It's probably not as bad as you think. Now, I've noticed in this 2017 Pacifica here, I can replicate the problem very frequently at about 14 miles an hour. I believe that's a shift point for the transmission, and it's an abrupt shift. The problem happens randomly at other times when downshifting, but it's always with the shift. So I know it's not an engine issue. Engine problems manifest themselves normally under high load conditions. So a misfire, things like that happen when you're at full throttle, when you're passing on the highway. This problem does not do that, and I doubt yours does either. So I'm going to tell you how to manage this problem with the transmission. So what is wrong with your Chrysler Pacifica? So first of all, we've narrowed it down. It's a transmission problem. This transmission is a 9-speed transmission made by the ZF Corporation based out of Germany. This is not a Chrysler transmission. It's used in the Pacifica, the Jeep Cherokee, not the Grand Cherokee, the regular Cherokee, the front-wheel drive version. Honda Odyssey uses this same transmission. And all of those vehicles have had kind of similar issue with rough shifts when using this transmission. So the good news here is the transmission is mechanically sound. It is not a mechanical problem with the transmission. It is simply a software control. And I believe this is due to the fact that the transmission is incredibly complicated. So to pack 9 gears in that front drive platform, they use different types of clutches depending on the gearing. And I believe this had a big learning curve for companies that do transmission controls. So another thing, is it Chrysler's fault? Whose fault is it? Ultimately, it is. They manufacture and sell the vehicle, but we should know the transmission control module is made by Bosch, and Bosch does the majority of programming on that transmission control module. So the big question is, what's causing the problem? I said it's a transmission control module. Specifically, it's the programming of that transmission control module. So if you go to your dealer and your vehicle is still under warranty, so this one is a certified used vehicle. It has 65,000 miles on it. And because it's a certified used, it is warranted for the powertrain for 100,000 miles. I took it into the dealer after I noticed the hard shifts, and there was a software update. And so they went ahead and did that software up for the transmission. And it did make an improvement. But what I noticed is over time, the transmission started shifting rough again. So I went in deep into all the forums and everything and got other people's perspectives and tried a transmission reset on here. And what that does is over time, this software and all these transmission control modules is monitoring shift times, clutch pressures, and how the transmission is behaving, and it tweaks clutch pressures, shift timing, all those things to try to make the transmission shift better and smoother throughout its entire lifetime. So your question is, well, what's the problem then? It's supposed to be getting better. Well, it's a good intention, but as they say, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. So the transmission control module is adaptive, as most are these days. This in particular, though, has some bad software, and I'm starting to think it's actually hard-coded into the transmission control module that they cannot change. Otherwise, they would have released a software update to completely fix the problem. But for some reason, I suspect the TCM from Bosch has a programming error or a hardware limitation in it that does not allow this to work properly with this transmission. So a recall is likely not going to happen where they have to replace the transmission control module completely. But what's really happening in the transmission, if we go down a level, when I say adaptive, what does that mean? So the control module, basically a computer, is monitoring shifts. So it's monitoring the timing of the shift, a bunch of different variables, engine load, things like that. And it's determining with an algorithm, artificial intelligence, how to make things better. So it tweaks clutch pressures, it tweaks solenoid timing, converter, torque converter lockup, unlock, things like that. So in this particular case, when that goes bad, what does that happen? So it monitors shifts and it says, oh, my 3 to 4 shift could be better. I'm going to reduce clutch pressure during that shift. And so the next time that shift occurs, it monitors the shift and goes, yeah, it's not quite bad. I'm going to further reduce clutch pressure. It monitors that next shift. It got even worse. So instead of going back and saying, well, that was a bad idea, I undo that change or go the other direction, what this does is get stuck in a negative feedback loop. So things are getting worse, so it keeps changing, but its changes are making things worse. So we need to get rid of those changes and go back to the baseline. So the great news here is it's relatively easy to clear that computer. It takes about 2 minutes and go to the baseline programming. And the baseline programming, when you took it for a test drive at the dealer lot, is pretty good. It's just over time, this feedback loop occurs and things start to go south. So I've stopped going to the dealer with this van and I'm managing the TCM on my own. So what that requires is resetting the transmission about once a month. So it's very easy to do, not much of a burden. I can tell the shifts are getting a little rougher, and by no means like when you go a year or 2 years without clearing it. That just gets ridiculous. You'll start noticing it when you're driving. Things get a little rougher, not quite as refined. Clear the transmission, you're good to go. You go to that base tune of the transmission and life is good. Now, why the heck isn't Chrysler doing this, and why doesn't the dealer know? I don't know. All I can think is that is a hardware limitation of the transmission control module or some sort of software that's hard-coded into that they cannot change. And to actually change the TCMs on all of these vehicles would be astronomical price, and wouldn't you know it, they don't want to pay it. So I hope this video was a bit of good news for you. I've got a video on resetting the transmission control module. And then the other thing I like to do with my personal vehicles is drain and fill the transmission fluid as a preventative maintenance piece. Other good news, when I did that I did it twice, about 50,000 miles and 60,000 miles. There was no metal, no shards. The fluid was pretty clean. So even though I've experienced some rough shifts in here, to me that tells me mechanical damage has not been done to the transmission. And as long as I continue to manage resetting the control module in there, I don't have any reliability issues about this vehicle going forward. I hope this made your day. I do not like seeing people getting screwed over by dealers and automakers. Thankfully, this one has an easy solution. The engine on these vehicles and the transmission, believe it or not, both are mechanically quite sound and reliable. This is an inconvenience and enough to tick you off, but the good news is you can manage it and it doesn't require any tools. You can do it from the driver's seat. So good luck out there. If you got any questions, put them in the comments. Thanks for watching. Adios.